Hello and welcome to Beyond the Continent on News Central Television. I'm Blessings Mosugu. Now let's start in North America, where the U.S. House of Representatives has passed a short-term funding bill in a bid to avert a government shutdown that looms on Friday, despite a major Republican revolt. The measure, which is the first major test for new House Speaker Mike Johnson, was approved by 336 votes to 95. The Senate is expected to approve the stopgap measure before the week's end. However, it must be signed into law by President Joe Biden before government funding expires on the 17th of November. Otherwise, tens of thousands of federal employees would be temporarily laid off without pay as soon as next week, and various government services will be abruptly terminated. Now, to further discuss this, I'm now joined by Adewale Damola, a legal practitioner and global affairs analyst. Thank you so much, Adewale, for joining us.
Thank you for joining me.
It's a pleasure. Now, Adewale, how do you think that the possibility of a government shutdown will affect the global perception of the United States?
So the US has been regarded as the international community because of its affairs in other countries. And majorly, how the US is very influential is because of its money. So the Congress usually comes together to pass the spending bill that will encourage the US executive arm to spend money for every affair is encountering all over the world. So right now we have the Israeli-Hamas war. We also have the Ukraine-Russian war. Without any spending funds from the US, that will not be possible. We also have US influence in Africa and some parts of Europe and Asia. So this funding is so important because without it, the US cannot perform.
Right. Also, what potential economic consequences do you think could arise from a government shutdown in the United States?
Well, we have a lot of federal workers or federal employees, and as you said in your news bulletin, we have the TSA, we have the police, FBI, ATF. All these people get their salaries from the federal government. With a government shutdown, that will be impossible for them to get paid. In all, there has been government shutdown since 1976. I think about 20 of them. So generally, if there's a shutdown, people will not get paid, and if they are not, you know, getting their funds or their income, then they can't do their shopping, they can't travel. In other words, a government shutdown is like a nation that is shutting down too, because invariably, without money, you can't take up any activity that you want to do.
Okay, Adewale, also, how might the political landscape in the United States be impacted by the outcome of the funding bill?
So the US has three major arms, which is just like Nigeria, the executive, the judiciary, and the Congress. So for Congress, we have two major political parties, which is Democratic and Republicans. And before you can pass the funding bill, there has to be like 3/5 of the Congress. That means that it has to be bipartisan. Right now, the Republicans are the one ruling the House and even the Senate, but they need the support of the Democrats before they can pass this bill. Regardless of the political affiliation of these parties and who they represent at the grassroots, they need to come together for the betterment of the country. So the political landscape is still united for the purpose of avoiding government shutdown. Afterwards, they can now go back to their different camps regarding their political agenda.
All right, looking at the fact that the United States seems to be the model country for every other country, how is it that, the US got to the point where they're almost having a government shutdown?
Interestingly, the US is the only country that does government shutdown, even though we have other Western countries who have this similar democratic process like the US. When it comes to government shutdown, they are different. Basically, because when there's a government shutdown in any other country, the political appointees, the president, the speaker, they can actually lose their jobs. Countries like the United Kingdom, countries like Australia, countries like Northern Ireland, they try to avoid their government shutting down because uh, there's a system they put in ground. Whenever there is a reason or there's an activity to fund the government, they do it in a de facto process. What does that mean? It means that They don't need to go to the house to see whether the house will look at whether, oh, this money is too much or not. We need money to run the government, take it to the Congress approves. But in the US, they try to delineate the powers. So Biden is part of the executive. Then we have the Congress, which is just the Democrats and Republicans. So when it comes to funding, the Congress members, they are the ones that vote on the bill, and the president doesn't have any power to talk on it. And because of that, he doesn't have to be afraid whether he's going to lose his job, because it's not his problem if the Congress doesn't pass the bill. However, when the Congress passes the bill, he must sign it to assent to it within a few days, I think 10 days by the Constitution. If he doesn't do that after 10 days, automatically the bill becomes law.
All right, now, in terms of preventing and managing government shutdown, what role does international cooperation play?
Interestingly, too, the international community may not really play any role because this is an internal situation within the US. The international community may just see how they can benefit from it later on. And sometimes, because of the different bodies within Congress, so there are some Congress members who are members of the Foreign Affairs Committee. And let's say they have this connection with the UN, connection with NATO, and there's a need for funding NATO in Europe. Some of these Congress members can be seen in discussion with some of the members in the international community. In other words, there can be a form of conversation to see, oh, if you're taking this particular stance regarding this, how about you agreeing to the remaining members of the Congress so that the Congress can pass the bill? What they have is just for conversational purposes. They cannot mandate the US to see how they can avoid government shutdown. The duty remains with the Congress members to avoid any form of shutdown. And if they avoid it, that will be to their benefit, because periodically they do elections and the grassroots can see that, oh, when you are in your position, you failed to comply, you failed to support the remaining Congress members. So the international community is just for advocacy purposes and nothing else.
Okay, also, Adewale, are there any historical examples of government shutdowns in any other countries that the United States can learn from?
I don't think so. As I said earlier, the only example of government shutdown has been the US since 1976. I think if any government in any other country wants to shut down, it will be based on their own economic situation and not because the legislatures are not coming together to come and pass a government bill. The US is a very rich country, but in order to make sure that there is no abuse of power by any arm of government, the democratic system of the US is in play. So even though the executive is very powerful, the power relies in the Congress to see which money will be spent for what. And even though they are very rich, they don't want to spend money anyhow. So unlike other countries whereby the available funds that they will have is what they will use, the US on its own says that the Congress, which is consisting of a lot of people across the country, they come together and they talk about it and they discuss and they vote before they can pass any spending bill into law. So the US is not really learning from any country, rather it's other countries learning from the US in this regard.
All right, Adewale Damola, legal practitioner and global affairs analyst, thank you so much for your time with us on the news.
Thank you for having me.